Thank you for joining me today for today's disability chat. I will be talking about financial planning in HD, understanding available options, and how to plan for the future. So, today I will be talking about financial planning generally, the costs of Huntington's disease, retirement and disability, saving and investing, asset protection, and insurance. And these things are the main things that make up financial planning when you search for a financial plan. So, what is financial planning? Financial planning means looking at your entire financial picture and creating a plan to achieve your short and long term financial goals. This is not something you do once, but something you should reevaluate as you meet your goals or your needs change. And a lot of times when families think about this, they think like they're only going to make one financial plan for their entire future. But when you're 25, your financial plan is going to look different than when you're 45, which is why it's good to reevaluate and just check back on things. So the main areas of financial planning are estate planning, retirement and disability planning, investment planning, protection, which is the insurance component, and tax planning. I will not be talking about tax planning today because I know a lot of things. Taxes is not one of them. So if you go through this financial planning process, please speak with a certified CPA or accountant if you have tax planning questions. So, some basic information about financial planning. This is just a quick 4-step guide. You can look things up online. You can get a 10-step guide, a 15-step guide. It just really depends on what you're looking for. But a good basic place to start is one, review your financial situation and typical expenses. Two, set your financial goals. Three, create a plan that reflects the present and the future. And four, fund your goals through saving and investing. And when you're thinking about financial planning, it is really important to also make sure you plan for fun things because financial planning is supposed to cover all areas of your life. If you want to have children, if you want to get married, if your kids are going to go to school, if you just want to plan a really fun vacation. So, this presentation is for really the complexities of Huntington's disease, but life isn't just about the serious things. So, when you think about financial planning, make sure you do fun things too because it's impossible to get through life if we don't do fun things too. So now I'm going to talk about the cost of Huntington's disease. And this is really important, and this is really highlighting why financial planning is so important for HD family. So the costs of Huntington's disease include medical care. Medical care gets expensive. You need specialized care from a neurologist, psychiatrist, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. There is specialized testing. Gene testing can get expensive. Whether you do it through your insurance or without, it can still cost a couple $100 at least. And then neuropsych testing. Neuropsych testing is a really great asset if you're going to apply for Social Security disability, but the test can be really expensive. And medical care for Huntington's disease doesn't necessarily start off expensive, but it's something that's going to get more expensive as you need more care. If you're somebody who has had a positive gene test, but you are not symptomatic, your medical care costs are going to be less than somebody who needs 24-hour nursing home care. And it's going to be less than somebody who's halfway through their journey. Another thing to consider is medication. Huntington's disease medication is really expensive. It depends on your insurance, so the numbers I have included in this presentation refer specifically to out-of-pocket costs, but this is just a general idea. So Austedo costs about $5,000 for a 2-month supply, and tetrabenazine costs about $700 for approximately a 4-month supply. And it's just good to be aware of. Again, what you're going to have to pay is dependent on your insurance company, but what I do know is a lot of insurance companies try to push back on these medications. So you may have to file appeals and get doctor's assistance to show why you have to be on this medication. Other costs of disability or of Huntington's disease include things like disability. When you have to stop working because of Huntington's disease, that is going to reduce your income. So, an inability to work is going to permanently reduce your income because if you have any kind of disability benefit, whether it's long term disability through a private employer or a private policy or Social Security, at most it's usually 60% of your income. And if you have Huntington's disease and you're disabled, you're not going to be able to go back to work to supplement those benefits. Legal preparation, another really important part of Huntington's disease, can get expensive. It gets really expensive if you don't do the proper planning. So something like estate planning costs between $200 and $1,000. While that seems like a lot, it protects you and your wishes. It means you know what your assets are, and it means you have decided what is going to your family and when. And that is so important because when you pass away, you don't want your loved ones to have to deal with all of the complexities that go along with that stuff if you didn't do it. If you don't estate plan, if you don't have a will or a trust, the state can take everything. Technically, they're supposed to go through your family list and your blood relatives to see who gets what, but sometimes the state can take a hefty portion of something if you don't have a will. So it's really important to do a will. Another thing that is essential for Huntington's disease is a durable power of attorney. It's almost a guarantee that if you or your loved one has Huntington's disease, they are going to lose capacity at some point. Being married is not enough legally to make decisions for your spouse. You have to have a durable power of attorney, and it has to be durable because durable power of attorneys don't expire. But as you can see, these easily cost between $200 and $500. And while that may seem like a lot, that is significantly cheaper than if you have to get guardianship. Guardianship can cost up to $10,000, if not more, is a very lengthy process, requires you to go to court, and is very, very emotionally difficult. So getting legal things done early, it is more cost effective and it will save you a lot of time and hassle. Then other things that are costs for Huntington's disease include nursing home care. And this can be in-home care or a nursing facility. But the average cost for nursing care, whether in home or at a facility, can easily run you about $50,000 a year. That's a lot. And then if someone is at home, you also have to consider home modifications, things like a shower bar, which that's not too expensive, or getting a new toilet. But if you have to make like actual modifications to your home, like buying a new ramp, or if you have to buy a new home, so let's say you lived in a two-story home, now you need to buy a ranch to make it more disability friendly. Like those are things that you need to think about, and those are things you can build into your financial plan. Now I'm going to talk about retirement and disability. And these things go along together because often retirement plans are also disability plans, or they have a special disability option. So the primary kinds of retirement plans are a 401k. This is an employer-sponsored retirement savings plan that is funded by pre-tax payroll deductions, and generally a 401k is provided by your employer. Usually the only way you can get a 401k is if your employer offers it. You also have an IRA, which is an individual owned and operated savings plan. Some employers provide these, but they don't contribute to it. Or if you don't have any kind of retirement through work, you can open your own IRA account. And you have the option of doing a traditional, which is pre-tax dollars, which means it's taxed when you want to take it out. Or you can do Roth, which is post-tax dollars, which means you're taxed before you put money in. So once you put money in, it's not taxed again. Then there's also the public retirement system. This is a public pension based on members' years of service. This is specifically for people who work for state and local government, police, firefighters, and teachers. Generally, public retirement system employees do not pay into Social Security. This is something that should be made very, very clear your first day of work, but that is not always the case. And so if you pay into a public retirement system, you have a completely separate system. You have to meet their disability and retirement criteria. And generally, that means you are not paying into Social Security. It's really good to be aware of this because I can't change your public retirement system if that's what you're paying into. And it's good to be aware of what you pay into because you need to know your benefits. If you don't understand your benefits and your rights, no one can help you. And then the last kind of retirement and general disability is federal retirement system. So this is a federal pension based on members' years of service, and this is specifically for the federal government. A lot of times, if you pay into their federal retirement system, you're also paying into Social Security. So if all of these options listed on here, the only one that doesn't pay into Social Security is the public retirement system. Oh, and I'm going to go back. And it should be noted that you can have multiple retirement plans. There is, like, you can have a 401k and an IRA. There are contribution limits. Most of these plans have some kind of contribution limit, but you aren't necessarily limited to one kind of retirement plan. So if you can afford to pay into multiple retirement plans, look into your options, and that is something to consider. So I just talked specifically about retirement plans. Now I'm going to talk about disability benefits. So disability is really broken down. It's broken down into four categories, and I should have put a fourth category on here, and that's my fault. But simplistically, it's broken into short-term disability, long-term disability, Social Security, and then whatever the public employment system equivalent is to Social Security. Short-term benefits are usually paid through payroll taxes or a private policy. There's a 1 week wait period. They usually last for 60 to 180 days, and it's usually 50 to 80% of your salary. Long-term disability is also either paid from payroll taxes or a private policy. So if your job doesn't offer it, you can get one of your own. There's usually a 60 to 100-day waiting period. These can last anywhere from 2 to 10 years or until full retirement age. With the policies now, that means either 65 or 67, and the average is 60% of salary. Social Security is always paid through payroll taxes. So if you do not have Social Security coming out of your payroll taxes, it means you're paying into a separate system. There's a 5-month wait period. It lasts until death, and it's the average of years worked, up to a total of 35. So if you've worked less than 35, they'll average all of your years of work. If you've worked more than 35 years, they'll average your highest earning years. And you can see on this infographic how all of this overlaps. Um, you can get a combination of public benefits, so Social Security, private benefits, and employer benefits all at the same time. And yes, private benefits have more of a cost, but they travel with you. Employment benefits, so things that come out of your payroll taxes, don't travel with you when you leave a job. So if you can take advantage of all of these things, take advantage of all of these things. So when you're considering retirement and disability, you want to look at what plans or policies do you have in place? How do your plans and policies work together? What would your monthly income be on disability? And are you taking full advantage of all of your policies? And I didn't mention this when we were talking specifically about retirement plans, but with 401ks and IRAs, usually you cannot withdraw funds until you are 59 and a half. The exception is if you are permanently disabled and can no longer work due to a medical condition. If you've been approved for Social Security disability or you have written documentation from your doctor saying you are permanently disabled, you can submit that to your 401k or IRA provider, and that means you can withdraw money from your plan before 59 and a half without tax penalty. So you also want to look into what are their disability requirements to take money out early. And I didn't mention this, but if you do have a 401k, generally a 401k comes with employer match. Match the employer to make sure you're getting as much money as possible. Money from your employer is free money. Take it. So now that we've talked about retirement and disability, we're going to talk about saving and investing. And usually the saying goes, save for tomorrow, invest for your future. So it means there's two different approaches for setting aside money for future goals. Saving is setting aside money for a goal. Investing is dedicated money toward the purchase of assets with the expectation the value will increase over time. And so what does that mean? There's really three big differences between saving and investing. Time. Saving tends to be more short term, and investing is more long term. There's also accessibility. Savings accounts are liquid funds that can be accessed at any time. A lot of us have a savings account with our checking account through our bank, but investments are generally more complex and take longer to convert to cash, and some funds require that money may be locked in an account for a set amount of time. Uh, Let's say you put money into a CD. Usually, if you put money into a CD as an investment, you can't touch that money for 2 or more years. And a lot of times, that's how you want to play it if you invest in the stock market as well. The stock market can be very volatile short term, but it can mean a lot more growth long term, but you have to leave the money in those accounts. And then the last thing is risk. Saving accounts are very low risk and money is practically guaranteed, but the rate of return is very small. The average rate of return in a regular savings account is 0.04%. And then investments can be very risky and volatile, but have a much higher rate of return. The average rate of return for the year for the stock market is 8 to 10%. Again, there are always highs and lows. So if you have a 401k or an IRA, those are in the stock market. The majority of those funds are in the stock market when you're young. They have three different categories: high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. And those things change as you get closer to retirement age. Like when you're in your 30s and maybe even your 40s, your money is in high risk accounts to grow as much as possible. Then when you get to like your 50s, they move it to moderate. So maybe half of your money is in funds, but half of it is in bonds and things that are a lot more sustainable. And then by the time you get close to retirement age, they put everything into the safe category. Maybe like 10 to 20% of your money is in the stock market for some growth, but they put it in things that isn't volatile. So when you need your money, you can take it. But so that's a way to think about savings versus investing. Savings is something that we usually consider like 6 months to maybe 2 years, or maybe 6 months to 5 years. But if you're waiting longer to take money out, that's when you start thinking of the stock market because people usually put stuff in the stock market if they're not going to touch it for 10, 20, 30 years. It gives you time to recoup any losses if there are downswings in the market. And this is just a little graph to highlight what I talked about on the last slide, the big differences between saving and investing. So, what are some good savings options? I mentioned this earlier, just a traditional bank account. The average savings rate is 0.37%. That's not very much. It means you're making like a cent or two every month. And these are traditional brick and mortar banks. There are online banking options. Another really good account to open if you're not as confident about investing in the stock market or things like that, it's beneficial to open a high yield savings account. The average rate of return is 4%, so that is 100 times higher than a traditional bank account. Majority of these banks are online, but they're very easy to open. I personally opened a high yield savings account a few weeks ago. I was like, you know what? I better practice what I preach. It took me maybe 10 minutes. It was very easy to use. You can use the option of getting a debit card from your online savings account. You can get checks. There's a lot of different things you can do, but it is something to look into. And I honestly recommend opening a high yield savings account now for HD families instead of investing in things like long term care insurance. Because if you come from an HD family, you're not going to get long term care insurance unless you test negative for Huntington's disease. And a lot of families have difficulty utilizing the insurance. They don't recoup the costs. So, with something like Huntington's disease, it's better to put your money in a vehicle that is always yours, that there are no strings attached, and that you can use the money for whatever you want whenever you need to. Traditional investing options include stocks, mutual funds, and real estate and property. I am not an investment expert. So if you do have investments or if you're looking into investing and what those options look like, speak to a licensed financial planning professional. They will be able to answer those questions. I just know what general options are, but that's pretty much as what I can tell you. I cannot give you more detail. But as you can see, stocks, mutual funds, and real estate and property, those are not things that can be so easily turned into cash, which again is why these are a more long-term option. It can take a few weeks or a few months if once you need the money to turn these things into cash that you use for your needs. So we've talked about retirement and disability, we've talked about saving and investing. Now we're going to talk about asset protection. And a lot of the things we have talked about count as assets. So retirement accounts count as an asset, savings and investing accounts count as assets. So what is an asset in general? It's cash, it's bank accounts, stocks, savings bonds, land and property, vehicles, retirement accounts, life insurance policies, personal properties, burial funds. It's essentially anything you own that could be changed to cash and used for food and shelter. And why is asset protection important? I didn't include this as a slide, and I should have, but asset protection is important because you have worked hard for these assets, and a lot of the government benefits that you may need for Huntington's disease, like Medicaid or supplemental security income if you're not eligible for Social Security disability, they have very strict asset limits. And so you want to make sure you have access to your assets in a way that you can still use them for your care, but don't preclude you from getting benefits that you may need. And you also don't want the government to be able to take your assets from your children. Like if you wanted generational wealth, if you wanted to be able to pass things on to your kids, you have to make sure your assets are protected in a way that the government can't take them, like especially if you have Medicaid. Medicaid can take your home after you and your spouse have died if you haven't put it in, like if you haven't put it in a trust or transferred the name in such a way that protects it for your family if you want to keep it for your family. Some of the first asset protection options we're going to talk about is estate planning. And what is estate planning? It is making a plan in advance to indicate who will receive your possessions, what you want them to receive, and when you want them to receive them. And this matters because when you go through the estate planning process, it'll also help you figure out what your possessions are, what things you need protected, what things you want to keep, when things need to get moved. And it's not really, it is for your benefit because it allows your family members to know what your wishes are and what you want done with things, but it also protects your family because when you pass away, you don't want your family to have to jump through all these hoops and go through all these burdens because you didn't make an estate plan. And trust me, it's a huge pain. No one wants to do it. So estate planning should include instructions for passing your values and valuables, instructions for your care if you become disabled before you die, because we think of estate planning as happening when we die, but estate planning can also include a living will, so how you want things to be done while you're still alive. It's really important because it can be naming a guardian for minor children if anything happens to you, providing for family members with special needs without disrupting government benefits, providing for the transfer of your business at retirement, disability, or death, life insurance, disability income, and long-term care insurance, minimizing taxes, court costs, and unnecessary legal fees for your family when you do pass away. And just like financial planning, and generally, it's an ongoing process. If you have a will that's 15 years old, you need to revisit it because things have likely changed since that time, and you probably don't remember everything that you put in your will. Another really helpful tool for asset protection is trusts. So, what is a trust? It is a financial arrangement that allows a third party or trustee to hold assets on behalf of a beneficiary or beneficiaries. Trust can be arranged in many ways and can specify exactly how and when the assets pass to beneficiaries. There are two main kinds of trusts. There's a revocable or living trust, and this means you maintain control of your trust and your assets during your lifetime. It is flexible and can be dissolved at any time, but it cannot be used to protect assets from Medicaid or Social Security. An irrevocable trust is really when you would have a third party, a trustee involved, and it transfers the assets out of your estate. Once you've established the trust, you lose control over the assets and you cannot change any terms or decide to dissolve the trust. But, like, this would be really good if you want to make sure you leave things to a disabled child. You don't want to interfere with their government benefits like Medicaid or SSI. You can use a trust to help with Medicaid eligibility because they avoid the necessity of spending down assets, and things in an irrevocable trust do not count as an asset for a government benefit. Again, revocable trusts do because you still maintain that money. but an irrevocable trust doesn't. And I'm not saying you have to put everything in the trust. Like, again, if you have a disabled child and you want to make sure they can still access government benefits but have enough money for their care, a special needs trust would be great. Setting up a special needs trust for yourself so you can continue to have care as you age through the process. And like, these are just different options. But trusts can also help you pass on things to your family and avoid tax liability. There's a lot of benefits to a trust, but you need to speak with a specialized trust attorney. These are definitely more expensive to set up than a traditional will, but they offer a lot more protections. And you can set up a trust based on your own personal needs. And you can have it set up so you only create a trust when you pass away. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So the two trusts that are specifically designed to help families maintain access to government benefits are special need trusts and Medicaid asset protection trusts. Special needs trusts were meant for dependents who receive government benefits, such as Social Security disability benefits or supplemental security income. These trusts enable the disabled person to receive income without affecting or forfeiting their government payments, and it's a good option if a parent wants to leave money to a child with HD. It's also a good option if you yourself have HD and you know you're going to become disabled later in life. Again, you don't have to like you can set up a special needs trust without funding it immediately. Like there are ways to make sure your needs are met now and your needs will be met in the future. Medicaid asset protection trusts are specifically to help people become Medicaid eligible so they can receive the care they need to be at home or in a nursing home. Assets in this type of trust are no longer considered owned by the Medicaid applicant, and these are good to protect assets for children, other relatives, to keep your house in the family. And this is a win-win for Medicaid applicants and their families because Medicaid has really strict financial criteria, but Medicaid is the only insurance that covers nursing home care fully. Medicaid does not cover it. Long-term care insurance can cover it, but again, HD families can't get long-term care insurance these days. And it maybe only covers 80% of costs, and a lot of families have difficulty with their insurance if they have it paying what they need to pay. Medicaid is the only thing guaranteed to fully pay for nursing home care, but you have to meet the criteria, and these trusts can help you do it. So now I'm talking about the last thing that we're going to talk about today, insurance, was the protection part of financial planning. And obtaining the right insurance is an essential part of financial planning because it offers protection in case of accident, disability, and death. We can't really predict the future. If you've been diagnosed with HD, you have an understanding of what your future will look like, but you could get hit by a car before that ever happens. We don't know. And so that's why these insurances are still beneficial. The most important insurances for HD families are disability insurance and life insurance. And the reason for that is disability insurance, make sure you have payments to make up for lost work. So this is going to benefit you and your family while you're alive. And then life insurance is a lump sum payment to your family when you pass away, but that can cover the costs of debts and their living expenses for a certain amount of time. So when you're thinking about insurance benefit planning, I've created this really nice chart to simplify it. There's three kinds of benefits: public benefits, private benefits, and employer benefits. Public benefits are things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. These public programs are subsidized through state and federal taxes, and your eligibility is based on how much you work and your work credits and if you meet the financial criteria. Most of the time, if you meet the work credit criteria, you don't have to worry about the financial criteria. But if you also need the financial, like asset benefits, then you have to worry about the financial criteria in the future. The only thing that public benefits offer are disability benefits and health insurance benefits. If you want any additional benefits, you're going to need to get private benefits. Those you pay directly to the company, and these are at a much higher cost. Eligibility is based on your medical records and your family medical history. So if you're getting private benefits, like let's say you're getting life insurance, they may require you have a health evaluation before they'll offer you benefits. They will likely ask about your family medical history. and things like that. But they offer a much wider range of benefits, so including disability, which includes short-term and long-term, health, life, long-term care, accident, hospital insurance, critical care insurance, and a lot of those other things. And then at the end, you have employer benefits. Employer benefits are very similar to private benefits, but they are provided by your employer, so they're provided at a subsidized cost. Eligibility is based on continued employment with that company. Sometimes they look through medical records, but usually that is not as much of a criteria, and so it's easier to get employer provided benefits. They offer similar things as private benefits. Like again, the big downfall is if you leave a job, you lose those benefits, and so you could go for some time without them. But this is just a nice summary of what to think about when you're looking at benefit planning, insurance benefit planning. And then this is just a quick compare and contrast for life insurance. I get asked this question a lot. Should I get term life insurance or whole life insurance? If you are getting insurance specifically to provide money for your family when you pass away, and that is all you're really looking for, then term life insurance is a really great option. It has lower premiums. It provides the death benefit, which is what you're looking for, but there is no cash value. But again, because there's lower premiums, there's no cash value, and the policy expires when the term is over. So term life insurance is usually like it's for anywhere from like 15 to 30 years. And when your term is up, usually you can renew or you have additional options. Whole life insurance is significantly more expensive, but the policy lasts your entire life. There's the same death benefit, but there is a cash value. So a whole life insurance policy is more of an investment. Once you've reached a certain threshold, you can start taking money out of your policy. But a term life insurance policy may cost $25 a month versus a whole life insurance policy, which could easily cost $250 a month. So that's a personal preference. You would want to speak, like it helps to speak to a licensed insurance agent to understand the cost benefit analysis for you. But that's just a general overview of those differences and what will make sense for your family. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, you can contact me directly. My phone number is 718-530-3857, and the best way to contact me is via email. I hope this provided a good overview of financial planning for Huntington's disease today. And like I said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.